Okay, so today we're going to dive deep into this idea of self-affirmation.
Okay.
And we're going to be using this book as our guide. Don't Let Self-Reproach Become a Habit.
Okay.
Um, and it's written by Usli, who is a really experienced Japanese psychological counselor.
Yeah, he's been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah, like since 2000.
Hmm.
He's been working with people, and he's seen like over 20,000 cases.
Wow.
Yeah, so he has a lot of experience to share, and this book is translated by Tech.
Right.
So, you might have heard of this whole idea of self-affirmation before.
Yeah, it's kind of been around, right?
Yeah, and maybe you've even tried like a few positive affirmations here and there.
Right.
But what we're going to try to do today is go a little bit beyond that and really explore Mont's main point,
Okay, sounds good.
which is that if you can really, truly nurture a strong sense of self-affirmation, it can lead to some really big and positive changes in your life, like across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's fascinating, too, is that he brings in this cultural perspective
Oh, yeah.
right away in the book.
Yeah.
He talks about how Japanese society really emphasizes group harmony and being part of the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and how that sometimes can make it a bit harder for people to really nurture that individual self-affirmation.
Right.
And he gives these really relatable examples of things parents might say.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
Like, look at how still so-and-so is sitting. Why can't you be the same? Or, that's rather embarrassing. What will people think?
Oof. Yeah.
And, it really highlights that pressure to fit in.
Totally.
And the constant comparisons we can get caught up in.
Yeah, and I think those examples like really stuck with me because I was like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard things like that or even thought things like that myself. And, it really makes you think about how much those early messages can really shape our self-talk and how we see ourselves even as adults.
Yeah, definitely. Like those early messages, they really become these underlying beliefs that we often carry with us without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And they end up shaping how we see ourselves and how we react to things.
Yeah, so our goal today is to pull out those really practical pieces of advice from his book
Okay.
that you can actually use in your own life.
I like it.
We want you to understand not just why self-affirmation is so important, but also how to actually do it.
Exactly.
Like where are the places in your life where focusing on this could really make a difference.
Right.
And, I think the book starts off by connecting these like everyday challenges we face to our level of self-affirmation. Like he actually says that there's a link between those two.
Right.
And he defines self-affirmation in a really clear way.
Yeah. How does he define it?
He says it's like being able to see your own worth
Okay.
as a person and having confidence in yourself.
So it's like that internal validation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
An acceptance that comes from inside of you, not from what other people say or think about you.
Right. So it's not about getting praise or approval from others.
Yeah.
It's about that feeling that you're okay just as you are.
And he also points out that this feeling, it's not like it's set in stone.
Oh, interesting.
It can change depending on what's going on in your life.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it can go up and down.
Exactly.
Depending on what we're experiencing.
And he gives us this really great contrast between people who have high self-affirmation and people who have lower self-affirmation.
Okay, I'm curious to hear this contrast.
So people with a strong sense of self-worth, they usually appear more confident. They're not as worried about what other people think.
Yeah.
And they're better at saying what they think and believe.
So they're more assertive.
Yeah. And when they face setbacks or challenges, they're more likely to encourage themselves and try again.
That makes sense.
Whereas people with lower self-affirmation, they often doubt their own value. They really look for that validation from other people. They feel drained by social interactions.
Oh, yeah?
And they're really hard on themselves when things don't go their way.
Right, so it's almost like two different ways of navigating the world.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
And it's interesting because he connects this back to that cultural context we were talking about with Japan.
Yeah.
He says that because there's this emphasis on humility in Japanese society, and people aren't as quick to praise each other, it can contribute to this lower overall sense of self-affirmation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he brings in social media.
Oh.
Which, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It can make us all feel a little inadequate sometimes.
Yeah, it's like everyone's showing their best selves.
Exactly.
All the time.
Yeah, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to these like curated versions of other people's lives.
It's hard not to, right?
Yeah, it can be a real trap.
So he actually goes on to connect this lack of self-affirmation to some pretty big social issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Like social withdrawal and isolation. But he also talks about how it shows up in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Like in our jobs, our relationships, and even as parents.
Right. Those are all pretty core parts of life for most people.
Yeah, and I think this is where the book starts to get really interesting.
Oh, how so?
Because it asks you to think about, could this lack of self-affirmation be contributing to some of the struggles you might be facing in your own life?
That's a really good question to ask yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it makes you kind of stop and think.
Yeah, and that brings us to chapter 2.
All right, chapter 2.
Which is all about shifting your focus
away
from the external world and back towards yourself.
Okay, I like that.
And he explains how low self-affirmation often leads to this cycle of self-deprecation.
How so?
Where we put ourselves down and compare ourselves to others all the time.
And with social media, it's like, that's amplified even more.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Right, it's like a constant stream of comparisons.
He also talks about this thing where we're always looking for the correct answer.
A correct answer. In what sense?
Like in our conversations with other people.
Oh, interesting.
He says it comes from a fear of being judged negatively.
Oh, that makes sense.
Especially when we don't feel good about ourselves.
Like we're afraid of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah. And he has this great little story about someone reacting to their girlfriend's new haircut.
Oh, I think I remember this one.
Yeah.
What was the point of that again?
He's basically saying that communication is really dependent on the situation.
Okay.
Like what you say and how it's received can change a lot.
Yeah.
Based on the context and your relationship with that person.
So there isn't always one right thing to say.
Exactly. And I think that's a good reminder to maybe ease up a little on ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Like we don't have to have the perfect response all the time.
And, you know, this fear of being judged can also make it hard to share our opinions.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Especially when our self-affirmation is low.
Like we might hold back from saying what we really think.
Yeah, because we're afraid of the consequences.
Like being seen as wrong or causing conflict.
Exactly. And that can happen at work, in our personal relationships, like everywhere.
So it can really limit us.
And he makes this point that when we're low on self-affirmation, it can be hard to even know what we really want.
What do you mean by that?
Like we can end up living our lives based on what we think other people expect of us instead of what truly matters to us.
Right. It's like we lose touch with our own internal compass.
Yeah. And that can lead to feeling lost and unfulfilled.
Yeah. Like something's missing, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Exactly.
And then he dives into this really important but often overlooked area.
Okay. What's that?
Excessive guilt.
Oh, yeah. Guilt can be a big one.
It can be huge. And he says it's not just bad for us, but it can actually be bad for the people around us, too.
Okay.
He gives this example of someone he calls A, who tries to help a junior colleague at work. And because A feels guilty for not doing enough, they end up taking on way too much responsibility.
Oh, no.
And they get totally burnt out.
Classic.
And the idea here is that this self-punishment
Yeah.
is often what drives our self-deprecation.
So it's like we're punishing ourselves for not being good enough.
Exactly.
Wow.
And what's really helpful is that he breaks down the different ways guilt can show up in our lives.
Okay.
He gives this numbered list in the book. And he talks about things like feeling like you don't deserve happiness, or being afraid that you'll somehow hurt your loved ones, or even pushing away good things that come your way.
It's like self-sabotage almost.
Yeah, exactly. And he really encourages you to like pause and think about, do any of these resonate with me?
It's like a checklist for guilt.
Right, like a guilt inventory.
And then he takes it a step further.
Okay.
And identifies 7 different types of guilt.
7 different types.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm curious. What are they?
So there's guilt from actually harming others.
Okay, that makes sense.
Guilt from feeling useless or inadequate. Guilt from not helping when you could have.
Okay.
The guilt that people in privileged positions might feel.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I never thought about that before.
And then there's feeling cursed or unlucky.
Oh, wow.
Inherited guilt.
Inherited guilt.
Yeah, like things that are passed down through families.
Wow, that's heavy.
And then guilt from our beliefs and values.
Okay, so it's really comprehensive.
Yeah, he really covers a lot of ground.
He does, and he gives examples for each type, too.
Which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, it can help you pinpoint where your own guilt might be coming from.
Okay, so then he talks about how putting other people's needs first all the time can lead to losing yourself.
Losing yourself.
Yeah, and he talks about 3 types of people who do this.
3 types. Okay, what are they?
The people who can't say no.
Okay.
The people who can't assert themselves in a healthy way, and the people who are easily influenced by others.
Right, so they're all kind of giving up their own power in different ways.
Yeah, and he connects this back to childhood experiences.
Like what kind of experiences?
Like having parents who are emotionally reactive or controlling.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's like we learn these patterns early on.
Yeah, and then we just keep repeating them in our adult relationships.
And then he gets into how this focus on others can lead to feeling exhausted and not having good boundaries.
Right, because you're always giving.
Yeah, and it's often driven by this fear of rejection.
Oh, you see that.
And he talks about self-sacrifice, where we prioritize everyone else's needs above our own.
And that can be really detrimental in the long run.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, you can't keep pouring from an empty cup.
Exactly.
And he also points out how this dynamic can create imbalance in our relationships. He talks about how when we're constantly trying to please others and anticipate their needs, it can lead to this feeling of pressure and a lack of reciprocation.
Like the other person isn't doing the same for you.
Right, exactly. And he brings up this concept of the balance law in relationships.
Oh, what's that?
It's this idea that healthy relationships thrive when there's a give and take.
Okay.
Like both people are contributing and supporting each other.
So it shouldn't be one-sided.
Exactly.
He also talks about how empathy, which we usually think of as a good thing,
definitely,
can actually lead us to prioritize others so much that we neglect our own needs.
And that can lead to resentment.
Yeah, and it can get in the way of building a strong sense of self.
It's like we're so busy taking care of everyone else that we forget to take care of ourselves.
Right, and he says that being observant of others is a strength, but we have to use it consciously.
So it's not about being manipulative.
Yeah.
It's about being aware of other people's needs, but also knowing our own limits.
And he makes this distinction between joyful giving.
Joyful giving.
Yeah, like when you genuinely want to help someone.
Okay.
Versus giving out of obligation or expecting something in return.
Right, so it's about the motivation behind our actions.
Yeah.
Like, are we giving freely or are we doing it because we feel like we have to?
And then he talks about how parents with low self-affirmation can sometimes create challenges for their kids.
Oh, how so?
They can become too focused on their children
and
end up being controlling.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, and that can actually hurt their children's self-confidence.
It's like they're passing on their own insecurities.
Yeah, and it creates this negative cycle.
So it's important for parents to work on their own self-affirmation.
Yeah, because it can have a ripple effect on their kids.
Okay, so then he shifts gears a little bit.
Yeah.
And he talks about the benefits of focusing on ourselves.
Oh, yeah. What are some of those benefits?
Well, he says that when we're more self-focused, we're less worried about what other people think.
Okay.
We're better at setting priorities. And we're actually able to see the good in others more easily.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like when we're not so caught up in our own insecurities, we can appreciate other people for who they are.
So it's not selfish to focus on yourself?
Right. It's actually the opposite.
Okay.
It allows us to be more present and more giving in our relationships.
And he makes this really important point about inner security, that it comes from within.
And not from external validation or other people's approval.
And he uses this analogy of traveling.
Oh, tell me about that.
He says it's like you can't rely on a travel companion for your own safety and well-being during a trip.
Right.
You need to be able to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's how it is with our own inner security.
We have to develop that self-reliance.
Exactly.
And he also talks about how true kindness comes from a genuine desire to help.
Okay.
Not from obligation or duty.
So it's not about feeling like you have to do something.
Okay, it's about wanting to do it.
And when we're operating from that place of self-awareness and self-affirmation, he says empathy becomes a powerful tool.
Instead of a burden.
Exactly.
And he goes deeper into setting boundaries in relationships.
Okay.
And he says that a strong sense of self is key to doing this.
Yeah, because you need to know your own limits.
Exactly.
And what you're willing to tolerate.
And he talks about finding that comfortable distance in our interactions.
Like how close do you let people get?
Right. And how much do you share?
Yeah. And he says that people with a strong sense of self are usually better at navigating this.
Because they're not afraid to set those boundaries.
Okay. So then he introduces these 3 communication models.
3 communication models.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more.
The first one is dependence. where the person is totally focused on others.
Okay.
The second one is isolation.
Isolation.
Which can look self-centered,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually a reaction to being too focused on others in the past.
So it's like they've swung to the other extreme.
Yeah. And then the ideal model is interdependence.
Interdependence, okay.
Which is all about having a healthy balance and a strong sense of self.
So you're connected to others.
Yeah.
But you also have your own identity.
And he really encourages us to try to cultivate that interdependent model.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He also talks about how we approach problems.
Oh, interesting.
And he says there's a difference between an other-centered approach and a self-centered approach.
So with an other-centered approach, you're focused on external solutions.
Right, like trying to change the other person or the situation.
And with his self-centered approach,
you're looking at your own role and what you can learn and grow from.
Even if the problem seems to be caused by someone else.
Exactly. Like even if your partner cheats on you.
Wow, okay.
You can still look at your own part in this situation.
So it's not about blaming yourself.
No, it's about taking responsibility for your own actions.
And your own growth.
And then he talks about the link between self-affirmation and reducing guilt.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He points out that people who are really self-critical often hold themselves to a much higher standard.
And they would hold anyone else to.
Exactly. And he has this really great advice.
What is it?
He says to practice self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance.
Just to acknowledge and accept that this is the current me.
That's really powerful.
Yeah, it's about being kind to yourself.
Instead of beating yourself up.
Yeah, and he talks about the importance of praising children to help them build self-affirmation.
So it's not just about adults working on this.
No, it's about setting kids up for success.
Exactly.
And he says that praise should be genuine and specific, like focus on their effort, their perseverance, their positive behaviors.
So not just general praise like, you're so smart.
Right. It should be tied to something specific.
That makes sense.
And he also talks about the power of expressing gratitude for children.
Gratitude for children.
Yeah, like thanking them for their efforts, their contributions, even for their existence.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's about recognizing their inherent worth.
Okay, so then chapter 3 is all about taking action.
Yeah, like what can we actually do to increase our self-affirmation?
Right, let's get practical.
So the first step he recommends is to shift our focus back to ourselves.
Which we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
He acknowledges that this can be hard.
Yeah, especially if we're used to putting others first.
Exactly. And he encourages us to be patient with ourselves. And he suggests reflecting on some key questions.
What kind of questions?
Like what truly brings you joy?
Okay.
What activities make you feel alive and engaged? What are your core values and principles?
Those are really good questions to think about.
Yeah, it's about getting to know yourself better.
And he also talks about identifying what's important to you and how that can help you feel more worthwhile.
Yeah, like what are your passions? What do you care about?
And then he challenges this idea that we have inherent flaws.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he says to try reframing our weaknesses.
Reframing?
Yeah, like instead of seeing them as negative, try to see them from a positive perspective.
Okay, I like that.
He gives some examples like if someone's stubborn, maybe they're also strong-willed.
Okay.
Or if someone's impulsive, maybe they're also enthusiastic.
I see. So it's about looking at the flip side.
Exactly.
And he even suggests making a list of your perceived flaws and then trying to find a more positive interpretation for each one.
I love that exercise.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it can really help you change your self-talk.
And then he brings up the idea of revisiting past traumas.
Past traumas?
Yeah, especially from adolescence.
Oh, wow, that can be heavy.
He says these experiences can sometimes be hidden sources of low self-esteem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he encourages us to ask ourselves about those difficult times.
Like what kind of questions?
Like, what were the most difficult things you faced as a teenager?
Okay.
How did those experiences make you feel about yourself? And are those feelings still present in your life today?
So it's about acknowledging the impact of those past experiences.
Yeah, and he points out how sensitive we are to shame during adolescence.
Yeah, those years can be brutal.
And he says that even small embarrassing moments can lead to lasting self-consciousness.
Oh, yeah, like that one time in middle school.
Exactly.
When you tripped and everyone laughed.
And he encourages us to reflect on those moments, not to relive the pain, but to understand where our current feelings might be coming from.
So it's about gaining insight?
Yeah, and practicing self-acceptance.
He also talks about the impact of negative romantic relationships.
Oh, heartbreak.
Yeah, heartbreak can be so tough.
And he encourages us to revisit those past hurts with understanding and self-compassion.
So it's not about dwelling on the pain.
No, it's about acknowledging it as part of your journey.
And he talks about past failures and setbacks, too.
Oh, yeah. Those can be hard to shake.
They can really knock down your self-esteem.
And he encourages us to re-examine those experiences from a more positive perspective.
So it's about finding the lessons in those failures and seeing how they might have actually helped us grow.
And then he gets into the importance of the rebellion phase in adolescence.
Rebellion phase.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He says it's important for developing a sense of self.
Okay.
And for people who didn't really go through a typical rebellion phase, he suggests writing down any unexpressed feelings or frustrations from that time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like giving yourself a voice.
Yeah, like a chance to process those emotions.
Okay, so then he moves on to family relationships.
Family relationships.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he says they're like the foundation for our interpersonal skills and our self-affirmation.
So they really shape how we relate to others.
Yeah. And he encourages us to recall significant family events.
Both positive and negative. And to reflect on the emotions we felt during those times.
He says this can reveal unconscious patterns.
Like patterns in how we interact with others.
Yeah.
And then he goes into detail about the mother-child relationship and how influential that is.
Yeah, he says it has a huge impact on our self-perception.
And he outlines 4 common mother types.
4 mother types.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about them.
So there's the emotional mother.
Okay.
The over-interfering mother. The overprotective mother.
Okay.
And the neglectful mother.
And each one can have a different effect on the child.
Right. And he encourages us to reflect on our own relationship with our mothers.
Right.
And how it might have shaped us.
And he doesn't stop there.
No, he talks about the father's role, too.
Okay.
He says that fathers often represent authority figures in a child's life. And that the relationship with the father can affect how we interact with authority later on.
Okay.
And also our overall self-confidence.
He also mentions the impact of a father's absence or negative behavior on a child's self-worth.
And their ability to trust in relationships.
Yeah, and he encourages us to think about our own relationship with our father.
Okay, so it's a lot about reflecting on our past.
Yeah, and understanding how those early experiences might still be affecting us today.
And then he introduces this technique called emotional release.
Oh, tell me about that.
He says that writing can be a really powerful way to release pent-up emotions.
Like journaling?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he encourages us to vent our feelings towards a significant person from our past.
Like our parents?
Yeah, or anyone who comes to mind.
Okay.
And he says the more intense the writing, the better the release.
So like really let it all out.
Exactly.
He even suggests writing unsent letters.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or keeping a grudge notebook.
Oh, a grudge notebook. I like that.
Yeah, it's a place to get all those negative thoughts out of your head.
So once we've done that, what's next?
He says the next step is to try to understand.
Okay.
And forgive the person we were writing about.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds hard.
It can be.
Yeah.
But he suggests trying to see things from their